Yo, YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy, Salvation's Elite. We are back with another video, guys. And today, man, we are talking CDL Atlanta. As you guys know, if you guys had a chance to watch any of the event this weekend, it was a pretty wild time. Upsets all over the place. A lot of what most of us didn't expect. Some big time runs from the Mutineers, the Rokkr, the Huntsmen kind of choked, and Atlanta made some big time plays and looked fantastic all weekend long. So we got a ton to talk about today. So this video, basically we're gonna be going team by team, breaking down some of the best performances, the worst performances, and some of the most crucial moments of the weekend. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get right into it. Let's go. So let's just go team by team here. Obviously we're gonna hop around a little bit because of how guys play each other and everything, and break down some of the situations these teams are in. So how about the first thing we talk about is London. So people had pretty big expectations for London heading into this event. Most people had them in their top 4, for sure 5 teams heading into this tournament. The majority of people had them coming out of the losers bracket in Group A, but obviously that's not what happened. They beat the Mutineers in the first round, and it wasn't even really that close. Petrodome was basically the only map that the Mutineers took off of them, and that ended up being a theme throughout the weekend, that the Mutineers were pretty good at Petrodome. But London looked really good throughout the series, and right off the rip, we were like, okay, here we go. London's a legit team. They looked fantastic. They kept the Mutineers in check. We weren't exactly sure where the Mutineers were at that point. Early on in the day, we thought, okay, well, Mutineers maybe like a bottom half team, but they have some potential. But that quickly changed. So Wuskins played an incredible event. He had a 1.38 KD on the weekend, which was the best KD overall in the whole weekend. He's playing that main AR role on octane levels right now for the London Royal Ravens, and it's keeping them in games that they shouldn't be in, and helping them win games that they shouldn't win because of how good Wuskins is playing right now. So you gotta respect that dude. Their roster is very similarly built to Seattle's when you look at Wuskins like an octane, but you can easily see the reason for why London's better. They got more slang power with Scraps and Dylan obviously in those positions. But either way, the Ravens event kind of came crumbling down after they lost to FaZe, which was expected. Most people kind of assumed that that was going to be the case. FaZe is going to be a tough team to beat. Obviously, we'll talk about them more in a bit, but that sent them down to then again rematch against the Mutineers after the Mutineers beat OpTic Gaming. And this is where it all came crumbling down for the London Royal Ravens. So again, in this series, Wuskins had a 1.41 KD, but the rest of his squad couldn't make it happen. Again, KD isn't everything, but it helps put things into perspective. I emphasize this all the time. I use the KD as a way to emphasize performance, but it definitely does not show even half the picture, but it is a good way to get a feel for how things are going. The next highest was a 0.97 from Scraps in the series. Mutineers played a really good series, and you have to give them credit. It's hard to tell where London is at this point. We'll quantify it all more, especially on the podcast, the Best of 3 CoD Esports podcast, coming out every Tuesday night, of course. You can go check that out, because we'll be going in depth on all of these teams even more than I am in this video. It was really a weird performance from London, and not what you wanted to see. You really thought that they could come out here and beat the Mutineers a second time. The matchups didn't necessarily favor them, having to play FaZe and then have to rematch against the Mutineers. But overall, I think London's still a top 5 or 6 team, and they should be fine moving forward. There's still a lot of upside for them as a squad. The Minnesota Rokkr had a pretty similar road to the London Royal Ravens. They had to play Paris in the first round. Again, most people didn't think that the Rokkr, they weren't sure, at least I definitely wasn't sure about what the Rokkr were going to be, because we'd only seen them beat basically the bottom 2 teams in the league in Minnesota. That was their home event in Minnesota, and they didn't dominantly beat the Guerillas or the Ultra, and so we weren't really impressed with that, but they came out firing on all cylinders in Atlanta. So they beat Paris 3-1 in their opening series, a statement in a lot of ways. It definitely caught my eye. I'm like, wow, all right, maybe the Rokkr are legit considering how good Paris looked in London. And then the Rokkr smoked the Huntsmen in their first map, and so we were all like, oh my word, are the Rokkr insane? Are they like one of the best teams in the league? And then unfortunately they dropped 3 straight maps to the Huntsmen, which sent them down to rematch against Paris again. And then again, the Rokkr took out Paris in game 5 to advance to the single elimination bracket. That was a huge statement game for them. I mean, the Rokkr looked fantastic. GodRx had a massive tournament. He was plus 75 in kills to deaths, which was the biggest plus minus out of all players at the event. One more than Cellium, who won the MVP of the event, which shout out to Atlanta for actually making those trophies this time, because it definitely helps solidify the event, and I really enjoyed that as a whole. But the Rokkr are definitely a dangerous team. They were sent home by FaZe in the first round of the semifinals, aka the first round of the single elimination bracket, but it was a really close series. It took FaZe to game 5 and unfortunately lost 6-4 in Game 5 on Gunrunner. Of course, if you're the Rokkr, you would have loved to see that miracle run go to the finals. At the end of the day, you got to be pretty pumped about how this finished, losing to the team that ended up winning the tournament and now probably nestling their way into the top 6 as well. So it's a pretty crowded top of the leaderboard here in the CoD League. So the team that the Rokkr beat twice, the Paris Legion, this is a weird situation for them as well. Them and London are in a weird boat now that the Mutineers and the Rokkr have kind of made their strides and then beat them in this tournament. What was interesting in that rematch between Paris and Rokkr is that both teams were willing to rematch on 3 of the maps that they played in the first series. That's pretty rare that you find that many maps rematched in the second time around. And what was crazy about it is that they actually flipped the results on all 3 of those maps, where the team who won the first time lost the second time. So really, really interesting that that wasn't even the X factor at all. But unfortunately, they end up getting 6-0'd in Game 5 on Gunrunner and S&D. And S&D still seems to be the Legion's weakest game mode, where we're really not sure where we're going to get from the Legion at this point. So moving forward, that's what they've got to really focus on. And if we see improvement in S&D from the Legion, they'll definitely be a really dangerous team. So real quick, I do want to talk about the Toronto Ultra because they were at the event. They went 0-2, but they did take some steps forward in my mind, considering how they played in those matches. First of all, they took 2 maps off the Huntsman, sent it to Game 5. Obviously, it didn't go in their favor. It was like a legitimately close, contested series, and Toronto looked really, really good throughout the series. And there was even a round 11 against the Huntsman.
The tension starts to build. Envoy's on the bomb, but Bance has just crept out of his position. And Greeny's going to find one from Looney. Now Bance is still on the left-hand side. Gunless now desperately trying to make his way forward. 3v3. Neither team is able to make a bad step wrong here, but Bance is crept round the back. Benjamin Bance finds one.
And not greedy, finds one, dips out, it's down to a 2v2. The substitute, can he go well? It's all up to Bance, they know the positioning, and FormaL is out of there. He's thinking he knows where Bance is, he's pushing straight through, but Bance has read it with 10 seconds. All he needs to do is make the kill. He's popped the dead silence. Can he get the player off the bomb? Yes, he's... Yeah! Oh my goodness!
Whoa, they killed him!
And then they played Paris. Again, really close series. They looked good in the hard point again, and it came down to another round 11 against Paris. And this is what happened.
System which they will, 2 through crates, 2 through the middle. And where will the first blood be drawn? Classic, he's back against the wall, he needs help, and he's not gonna get it. Looney's gonna go down as well. They were 5-3 up, Toronto. And now in a 3v5, making a 3v4 as Cammy does find Kismet, Methods finds Zen. Long range shots there, it's the MP5, it all comes down to just 2. It's Dens, it's Shocks, and Paris Legion pull it out of the bag.
For Toronto overall, you can't be horribly disappointed. Obviously, you can't be happy with the outcome, but I think there were steps in the right direction. Maybe down the road, they can be even more competitive and then start winning some games and be in decent shape, you know, in the middle part of the year. And Methods played really well. He had a 1.22 KD on the weekend and was really good in both hardpoint and domination. I mean, that's good to see for Methods. I like the dude. He's one of the most fun dudes in the league. And so hopefully Toronto can figure it out and Methods can be a big part of why that's the case. So now for the juicy 4 teams, we got OpTic, we got the Mutineers, we got the Huntsmen, and we got FaZe. So let's start off with OpTic. Oh man, they still don't have any points in the CoD League, which is pretty rough. They are the only team that has no points in the CoD League right now. Their problems just keep shifting and changing. Obviously, the last 2 events, we thought JCap and TH were the problem. This time around, JCap had a better event. I mean, nothing great, but none of his teammates besides Dashy looked good throughout the weekend. TH still didn't have a good week. And so, at some point here, OpTic's gonna have to make a roster change if things keep going this way. And like, what's crazy about how they lose is it's always so close, man. They just can't finish out matches and get the last round or the last push or the last hill break or the last flag cap, whatever it is. They just cannot finish out the maps to win what they need to win. In the Mutineers match, like, the Mutineers ended up beating the Huntsmen. They lost round 11 in Search and Destroy map 2. Right here.
OpTic Gaming LA, it is clear as day. It's going to be an A push.
Trophy's saving lives. Kenny has gotten past the mid-mark point. He can get to the Rokkr, shoot the player off bomb, and just like that, first blood is in.
It's too easy. It's way too easy. No one checking. And Quavo says, thank you very much. I'll claim a man advantage. And Skies needs to be careful. Havoc actually finds himself a double. All of a sudden, the round looks very, very different as Frosty finds one as well. Havoc wants to just try and push straight through the smoke. That's 3 for him in the round. And just like that, Dashy left to perform heroics. A 1 versus 4. I think did he spot Skies?
Absolutely.
He could maybe make this interesting. If he can turn this into a 1 versus 2, his teammates will without a doubt call that out. There's Skies, but Skies wins the gunfight anyway.
Which was so painful. Oh, like just that's gotta hurt so bad if you're an OpTic guy. And then on the Dom, on Petro, this is the craziness, one of the craziest things we've seen this year. There was basically a draw. This was the whole thing. I'm sure most of you guys have seen this already, but let's play the last 30 seconds because it was just madness.
I think they might have done the neutral over there. Frosty might be able to get this on A. This might be the moment.
Do you stick it? Do you stay? Well, the nade comes through again. 2 nades. It's Dashy this time that shuts him down. OpTic, no, they have to cap the home hill with 15 seconds left. 142 to 140. How many ticks will we see? Could it potentially tick over for Florida? All they have to do now is defend B with their lives. 143, 142. It will tick the tie. 144, 144. OpTic Gaming. They assault B, but there's no time. Orista, Florida steal. They steal, but no. Draw.
So yeah, literally the last tick of the match, it gives the extra point to the Mutineers, which I think rightfully it should have, and the Mutineers win by 1 point. OpTic just can't catch a break in that series. You hate to see it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So they have the LA event, their own home event, coming up here in 2 weeks, and then they have a really, really long break until their next event. So I would assume that they would play the OpTic homestand with the roster they currently have, and then use that long period to potentially try out a new roster if things don't go their way in LA. So keep an eye on OpTic because that's the most likely place for changes to happen in the upcoming few weeks. So let's talk about the Huntsmen. In their minds, they blew it, and it really, really hurts. They came out so flat in the tournament. They almost lost to Toronto in the first match of the weekend for them. Like, what? Toronto looked horrible the past 2 weeks, which, I mean, of course, we've already talked about Toronto. And then, like, how in the world does it come down to this? It just doesn't make sense. They nearly blow it against them. And then in their match against the Rokkr, they got absolutely smoked in map 1, 250 to 107. And I thought that was going to be the wake-up call because they went on to then win the next 3 maps and take them out. So I'm like, okay, I thought, all right, the Huntsmen are back. They're going to steamroll to the finals to play FaZe. And then here come the Mutineers. The brother versus brother narrative was real, and the Mutineers came out firing on all cylinders.
The type of momentum shift.
You still have Havoc as well. Havoc inside a good spot.
Is set up deep, connects on the shots. It's all to Arcitys to try and clutch. He can't do it! As Florida get the W, Prestinni wins the battle versus brother.
Match aside, what did this mean to you two to go up against each other today?
I don't know. He's a good player. He's a good brother. He's good everything. I don't know. Good for him. I'm happy he won. Sucks that we lost. We played like shit. Sorry. I'm just pissed off, and we actually threw that, and we got to play better.
You got to play better there from the Huntsman side. Now, Prestinni, you guys come out on top. It's got to mean the world to you here. What does this matchup mean to you?
I won't even get into it. I don't want to start anything. He's my twin brother. We're the closest people we have in our lives, and I don't want to go into detail, but it's an amazing feeling, you know, to be underrated all this time and do something major without him and prove that I don't need anyone in particular is a really good feeling.
And the Huntsmen just weren't able to capitalize on good situations throughout the series. Gunless struggled throughout the weekend, which is incredibly rare for him. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. They just seem off overall, and none of the game modes feel consistent whatsoever. They have a lot to work on moving forward. I think they're going to be totally fine, but for some reason, their mentality, they struggle against Toronto. They beat the Rokkr, and then they lose a match nobody thought they would lose to the Mutineers. I think there is some type of mental X factor there when it comes to those guys where they just get overconfident. They don't bring their A game in those matches. And shocker, it's hard to regain when you're playing against very, very good professional Call of Duty players. So they've got like a month now because they don't play until Dallas at the end of March. So they have a long time to figure out their problems. So we'll see what happens. I'm very confident that the Huntsmen will be fine. But what really sucks about them losing was obviously the fact that we didn't get to see the FaZe versus Huntsmen match we were all looking forward to. I mean, there is something kind of nice about like putting off the hype till way later in the year, which the next time they'll actually be at an event together is in Chicago. So FaZe won their own homestand. So can the Huntsmen win their own homestand against FaZe? That'll be really interesting. That's not till April though. So we got like 6 weeks or so to wait until the Huntsmen could play FaZe again. So the hype is going to build like crazy. I really hope we get it then, but we got a long ways to go. But by then, I'm 100% confident the Huntsmen will be totally fine and be right there with FaZe as the best teams in the league. So the Mutineers, they had run-ins with basically everybody at this tournament, and they played a fantastic, shocking tournament overall. After that first match against London, I really didn't think they had a chance. I mean, they looked really bad against London. It felt like London took them to the shed and beat them down. Prestinni got absolutely smoked. Havoc got absolutely destroyed. And it didn't feel like the Mutineers had anything going for them. Lo and behold, everything turned around. Like literally in that first series, Prestinni went 15-29 and 19-34 in the hard points, and Havoc went 9-30 and 16-30 in the 2 hard points. So both of them like legitimately got destroyed. And Prestinni did say like he wasn't feeling very good and the team just was off going into the series, and so they were lacking confidence. And apparently maybe that was the case, because they came out firing on all cylinders the next day and just looked fantastic. The turning point, at least to me, really felt like the hardpoint versus OpTic Gaming, where in map 1, Prestinni had gone 12-29, was still really struggling, and they were getting absolutely fried. They lost 250-139 on Ramaza to the OpTic, but then on map 4 on Hackney, they played really well. Prestinni went 36-31, and that really felt like the moment the Mutineers kicked it into gear, and we're like, oh, this is how we play. This is how it's going to work. And from there on out, they looked great. So then they went on to beat London 3-2 to then play FaZe. I mean, throughout the whole weekend, Skies looked just fantastic, incredible, really good. He was playing the main AR role just how you want any of the best players to do it. And at the end of the day against FaZe, the slaying power just won out. I mean, it was a pretty hot 3-0 from FaZe. Nothing too crazy, never really felt that close. And with the Mutineers right now where they're at, I'm not sold that they're going to be like an elite team week in and week out. But we do know they have upside. They have an ability to play together as a team. And I'm excited to see what they can do the upcoming few weeks, because they're a team that if things start clicking into gear, Frosty, Havoc really find their form, they could be really dangerous. So definitely one of the top teams to keep your eye on moving forward after this crazy performance in Atlanta. So speaking of Atlanta, the Atlanta FaZe proved they are the best team in Call of Duty right now. Cellium, fantastic. The MVP of the weekend. Simp, dominant as always. AbeZy and Prista, they just play the objective as well as anyone. They do whatever their teammates need for them to win. And Major Maniac, he played an incredibly slow weekend. He only had 14.1% of their team's kills, which like seems impossible. And he only had 18.4% of their team's deaths. So like, he was just playing objective all weekend long. He was rotating, getting those kills, maintaining those lanes, maintaining map control. But at the end of the day, when you have the slaying power on your team that the rest of those guys bring, Major Maniac doesn't have to do too much. I mean, in Search and Destroy, he's always good. The respawns, the questions. And for FaZe, I mean, it seems like the only game mode that anyone has any chance against them in is Domination. If in any way they get better in Dom, I don't know what team's going to compete with them in the upcoming few weeks, because they just seem unstoppable at this point. So it'll be really exciting to see what happens with FaZe. It might take a meta change for things to switch up right now, because FaZe just looks so good. Just in a technicality aspect, they play hardpoint, so disciplined. They trade kills better than any team out there. In Search and Destroy, when they push to bombs, they're so aggressive. They push the pace of the map better than basically anyone. They get bombs down and set up just as good as anybody in the league, probably the best in the league. And then of course their natural gun skill just is the X factor in a lot of situations. Right now they move better in the game, they shoot better in the game, and they play together as a team better than anyone else. There really is no argument week in and week out for a better team than Atlanta FaZe. So man, we just flew through that. I mean, again, we could probably talk about this for 2-3 hours and not be done talking about everything we learned about this weekend. So again, the best 3 Call of Duty Esports podcast. We will be going in on this whole weekend and really taking a deep dive into all of these topics. So I hope you guys tune in for that one. I really do appreciate your guys' support. It means a lot to me. Drop all your comments down below about what you think about the weekend and where you think these teams are all at. And we'll see you next video. So as always, guys, I appreciate it. And as always, I'm your boy, AbeZy, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.